I'd like to introduce Elizabeth Fletcher, who will be speaking on dam governance in artificial intelligent future. She is the lead digital asset management librarian with Dell. Elizabeth, thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much, Tracy. Alrighty, guys, I'm going to start with the preface of I have a cold. So if we may have some slight coughing, water delays, so bear with me. The holidays, it happened. The timing, of course, is perfect, so I apologize for the state of my voice, but I'm really excited to be here. So as Tracy said, I am the lead DAM librarian at Dell. I've been at Dell since 2018, so I've seen a lot of changes, not just at Dell, but in this space over the last 5 or 6 years, which is crazy how quickly that has happened. So what I want to talk about today, and I'm going to focus pretty intensely on getting through my slides in about 15 to 20 minutes, because I would really love some excellent questions. And I know Tracy is going to be monitoring the chat for any questions, so don't be shy. Please feel free to drop any questions. I want the last 10 minutes to be much more of a conversation. So what I'm going to walk through today is the lessons that we have learned starting in about 2018 to 2019, before the world had heard of ChatGPT, and what we did with smart tagging, auto tagging, what we learned, what we liked, what we didn't like, and how we are positioning ourselves to take those lessons learned into how we're working with auto-generated auto tagging in the future, and also just the focus on human-centric librarian review and why that is, I'm going to argue, not just important, but more important now than it even was, 3, 4 years ago. So we're going to start with kind of a very high level what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to explain how our dam is set up, because I know that everybody does things a little bit differently. And then we'll kind of get into the meat and potatoes of some less than ideal situations we had a couple of years ago and how we're kind of using that as a learning point and going forward. So obviously the benefits, right, of AI are huge, right? The risks tend to be commensurately large. So we've had some interesting past experiences. We've learned a lot. I'm going to talk about the implications of what that tagging, Gen AI tagging, is without human oversight, right? The realities and the legal potentialities of ungoverned, either human or AI generated metadata, right? Having that just kind of be a free for all. And then the anticipated challenges and opportunities that we're using for a new auto tagging functionality that we're pretty excited about that we just kind of rolled out. Alrighty, so this is how our dam is set up. So our governance, our checkpoint is right in the middle. So we have a subset of users that are our uploaders. They go through special training, they upload, and my team, the librarians, we're currently 3 strong. We review everything. So everything that ends up on our dam has gone through a librarian to some extent. Everything that we check for, our brand, our legal, our tagging, all of that is then published by the librarians, and it ends up available to our general users. These tend to be more marketing heavy folks that are searching, sharing, downloading. So that's the way we set things up. So there's always that checkpoint right in the middle. But obviously with AI, we want to make it faster, better. But the main focus I'm going to get to here in a minute is we don't want to lose that quality, right? We want to get faster, we want to get better, we want to do things at scale, but we don't want to sacrifice quality for that. So this was the implementation that we did with some smart auto tagging 5 or 6 years ago now. So again, this was before ChatGPT took the world by storm, before everybody's third word was AI, Gen AI. I don't know if anyone else remembers those days when it wasn't the topic of every conversation, but there was a time where that was the case. So we implemented the smart tags. I think we were a little naive, again, because this was not something that we had a lot of experience with. It wasn't the buzz that everyone's talking about it now. And we are a very, very large system. So we're sitting at about 500,000 assets. My team processes about 100,000 of those a year. So we're large, right? So the analogy that we use at Dell a lot is anything with the dam is kind of like trying to turn the Titanic, right? She doesn't turn on a dime. So anything that we're thinking about doing or want to do, we have to have a slightly longer runway than a smaller system, just because of, all of the various integrations that we have plugged into our dam. We're impacting a lot of people whenever we do something. And I would say our biggest takeaway from this smart tags was, like I said, we were a little naive in terms of, we just kind of applied this, right? We said, yeah, smart tags, we'll take it. Didn't do a lot of looking into it, didn't really do a lot of training of the model. And boy, was that a very large takeaway. So you can see on my screen right now, these are some of the examples of the problems that we came across with these smart tags. We all kind of know this now. Again, this was several years ago. It's only as good as the model, right? If there's something wrong with the model, if the model isn't trained right, if the model has its own biases, which you can probably see some of those here, that's going to be applied to all of your data. And again, we're a really large system. So we looked at this and realized, okay, not only are these problematic and we're having trouble training it, it's now widespread, right? It's everywhere. It's touching 500,000 assets. Oh gosh, what do we do? We did end up turning this particular smart tags model off. The models that we have seen and kind of demoed and POC'd in the last year or two, much better. Again, I want to emphasize this was in 2018, so this was a while ago. But all that to say, it still provided a lot of really important takeaways that we're now using as we have these more sophisticated conversations with the more sophisticated technology that is available today. So the biggest one that we learned was the partnership with the implementation and the training of the model itself is key. Like I said, we didn't know a lot about this model. We didn't know a lot about how to train it. We just said, yeah, sure, we'll try it. That might have been a mistake on our part. So especially if you're working with, like an external vendor or a third party, having that partnership before you implement anything, particularly around this, particularly in our case, because we're a larger system, was a lesson that it's kind of the header of the top of our to-do list going forward. And again, we want to know those parameters ahead of time before the implementation, right? We want to start small and grow it so that it works, right? We don't want to do a blanket, oh yeah, let's just apply it, which is what we did here. We did end up having to take this off, right? So we had to do some cleanup scripts. It kind of put us on the back foot a little bit. So all of those things together were sort of in the back of our head when we started doing more work with AI. And again, when everything kind of blew up, I guess it was 18 months ago now. So our process, right, our librarian review process, we have a less than 1% error. So one of the things, again, that was kind of at the header of that top of that list was, okay, great. We want to speed things up with AI. We want to free up particularly our creative teams to do more creative work rather than just inputting metadata. But we don't want to move forward and lose the quality that we have now, right? The way that I always think about it is I want this to make people's lives better. That's always what you want, right? Minimum, you want it to not get in their way. The one thing you want to avoid, you never want it to make their lives worse, right? That is the absolute opposite of what we're all trying to do here, right? We're trying to save time. We're trying to get those search results better. We're trying to improve that metadata. We don't want to take a step backwards simply to say, oh, we have an AI tagging model. Okay, well, if it's not as effective, what are we gaining here, right? So we've all heard it, garbage in, garbage out. So the quality of our metadata is that bedrock foundation for any other AI models we have going forward, right? Everybody's, thinking about personalization at scale, all of these really amazing things we can do. If you're losing traction on the bedrock there, you're just spinning your wheels, right? And that's not what we ever want to do. My team in particular, we want that review. We want that human touch so that we can maintain that level of quality without sacrificing. We never want to sacrifice quality for speed. And that was one of the things that we really learned. Also, as anyone who's seen some of these models, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but whenever I see, a tweet or a post about AI fails in the wild, they do tend to make me giggle when it's not my system, right? It's not as funny when it's your system. So that the consequences of those unreviewed, AI system-wide, let's apply smart tags to 500,000 assets. In our case, there's no undo button, right? We had to go in and kind of redo that. We don't want to lose that existing quality. Again, the bigger the system, the larger that these problems all become. So we took all of this from that first dipping our toe into those smart tags, and we thought, okay, how can we do this better? So we're actually implementing an auto tagging. So this is something that we did build in-house. And the focus was not just the kind of pie in the sky, we want to make search better, which again is the goal, but that's a very high level thought process, right? What are we doing to actually get there? So in this case, we said, all right, let's do time savings, right? We want the metadata to still be as good. We want the librarians to still review it. But if we take the really low hanging fruit, that'll free up time for our uploaders and that'll free up time for the librarians, right? Because if we don't have to fix anything, it's faster. So that's the way that we kind of focus. So again, as opposed to the sort of scattershot smart tags that we did a couple years ago, we went very, very focused, very narrow. Again, we were building this in-house, so we were learning, we were iterating on our own. But all of those things have proven to be really successful. So we're starting small, right? We're taking the things that are most impactful, most important, in this case, most time consuming, to our stakeholders. So it's not just doing AI for the sake of doing AI. I'm sure everyone on the call can relate to that. We've heard it a lot. You hear it, at your company, you hear it in the industry at large. What are you doing to implement AI? I've seen some incredible things. In fact, we had a call this morning with some new tools that were, what it could do was frankly shocking, like how quickly it could do some things. But again, if you're not careful in that implementation, we have found that you're going to do more damage than you are going to do good. So the thought process here is we always want to build functionality, learn, and iterate on that functionality from a place of learning, not a place of hype. And I think that the next session after me is all about the hype, right? We hear it, it's real. You get questions about it. We certainly get questions about it from our leadership. Sometimes the hype is real, sometimes it's not, right? So when it comes to working with AI, bringing it into our lives, bringing it into everybody's different, everybody's dam is different, everybody's company is different, everybody's instance is different, everybody's tools are different. Making it work for you, doing it from a place of your experience and your learning, which again comes from those people who have been here for a while, the boots on the ground. We did this in the past, it didn't work. We did this in the past, it did work. Now it could work better because we have better technology. All of those lessons learned, again, it's that touch point that is going to make these implementations work better. So one of the things we see a lot is, let's move, let's get it done. We have found that if we take a little bit of extra time from the starting blocks, we save time at the end of the race, right? In this example, right, we took a few metadata fields, the kind of, again, lowest hanging fruit, the ones that are really basic. We pulled a lot of it from the file names. That's what we automated, right? We didn't try to start with the pie in the sky. We want the model to be able to read a white paper and spit things out. We started very basic. We started with product images, which, not a shock that Dell's DAM has a lot of product images. I don't think I'm going to rock anybody's world with that statement. So it's a very high volume. It's very important to our stakeholders. It takes our creative teams a lot of time to upload those. So that was where we focused, right? We did not retro this. We started it in August and we've moved forward with it. We did not touch any of the hundreds of thousands of existing product images that are in the DAM, right? Because again, we've learned with these models, start slow, save yourself the headache of undoing the good work you've already done, right? You never again want to make things worse. You're starting here, you want the AI to slowly get you here. You don't want to drop down here, which I've seen a little bit of. So again, all of that to say, we always want to take these lessons, what we've learned. In fact, I'm hoping people are putting things in the chat of the lessons that they've learned, because I'm always on the hunt for more cautionary tales. The whole discussion around this, right, is not AI is bad, let's not use it, right? I think there is, on the hype train, right, the moment someone tries to say, hey, maybe let's pump the brakes a little bit, that can be a sticky spot to be in. I've certainly felt it in my role, where you think, ooh, maybe I don't want to say this. I don't want it to be taken a certain way. I think it's our duty to say, this is great. We want to use it, but let's be smart about it, right? Hey, we've had these other instances in the past, or I have a colleague, or, whatever, wherever you're pulling your information from, whether it's your own experience or you've watched other dams implement something that maybe did or did not work. We've all been there. Taking all of that information so that when you do it, you're making smart decisions, right? Because the only thing that we don't want to do is undo all of the good work we've all been doing for many, many years by applying a model to a system that doesn't do as good of a job, right? So, and I'm going to keep an eye on my clock here because I want to make sure we have plenty of time for questions. But all of that to say, right, this is why that human touch, that librarian governance, all of that is really, really important, right? Because we want to make sure that the technology is working for us, not against us. And we have seen some of that a little bit. So again, all of those lessons that we've learned, this auto tagging model, which we've only had for a couple of months, is already proving more successful than sort of the blanket scattershot smart tags that we did, because we were more strategic from the jump. Again, experience always helps, right? We'd learned some very important lessons. But we've already learned lessons from the auto tagging, things that work, things that haven't. We're working on scaling it, right? We're going to a phase 2. All of those, having someone that is watching the implementation that has experience in the field to scale it, right? Instead of starting big, fixing it and starting back small, is all just to make it work for us, right? So I'm gonna kind of pause there. I'm gonna wrap up there, and I'm gonna see Tracy. I'm gonna flash my name and email up on the screen in case anyone, if we run out of time for questions, if anyone wants to contact me, you're more than welcome to. But I'm gonna pause and keep my promise, and see what questions we've got going in the chat. I'm also going to take a sip of water, so again, bear with me for the cough.
All right, Elizabeth, as you take your sip of water, I'll go ahead and read off some of the questions that we do have. We have a few questions.
Oh,
Do you
good.
have a workflow in place, or you get notified when anything gets uploaded into the dam? How does that workflow work for you?
Great question. Yeah, so we do. So I'll not to make everybody dizzy here, but I'll go back up here. So yes, we do have a workflow process. So our users that we refer to as our authors, you can also use the word uploaders, right? They upload the files, they've gone through their training, they do their metadata. Some of them now have the auto tag assist, but most don't yet because we're still scaling that. They do all their metadata, then they do start a publication workflow. The librarians are then notified of that. And then we process it according to what the asset is. Again, we are a very large system, so we have multiple different users and different use cases. So some assets are for campaigns, some are for just images. Again, a lot of product images on the Dell Dam. So we process them according to what they are. Like I said, we process about 100,000 a year, and our turnaround time is 1 business day. We're generally seeing 250 to 300 cases a day, especially this time of year. It kind of bumps up to 400. Again, not a surprise. It's a big buying season for everybody. But yeah, so we do get notified, and we are constantly pulling from that. We call it our processing queue. And we do it by timestamp. So the sooner you get in, the sooner you get attention.
Thank you. Next question. Do you tag any metadata specific to the product? Like, do all 2-in-1 laptops have the same metadata tags, or are there unit tags at the UPC level or SKU level, anything like that?
Great question. We don't get down to the SKU level in the DAM, but we do have product specific tags. So in fact, our metadata schema, and we've been working this year on trying to narrow it down a little bit, but our metadata schema is quite large. We're pushing a little over 100 fields. Not all of those fields are required for every asset type, but for product, there are, I want to say 7 or 8. There's a whole tab in our metadata schema that is specific to product. So we have product manufacturer, line of business, right? So if it's an Inspiron, or it's an XPS, or it's a Precision, we have specific tags for that. And then again, all of that is filterable on the front end, right? So if you are a user and you want to come to the DAM and say, I want a right profile shot of the Precision 3280, you can do that with filters. You can tell it, I want the right profile, I want a Precision, and here's the model number. So all of that information is in every product image for every model. So yeah, we do get very, very granular. Again, not a huge shock to everybody. We have a lot of product images on our DAM. So we do have a lot of product specific metadata fields for that very reason.
And are any of those product metadata fields taken from folder structures that they're dropped into, or file names? Like you have a file name structure that allows you to define some of those and automate that process?
Yep, both. The answer to that is both. So we do have a folder structure that is very specific. So it goes, images, product, laptop, Inspiron, and then the models. Excuse me, guys, sorry. And then we also have very, very formulaic file names for our product images. It's, the model number, there's specific codes, there's codes for the orientation, how open the screen is if it's a laptop, the color, there's all these very specific codes because a lot of those, it just makes it easier because like I said, we have hundreds of thousands of product images in the DAM, so they can't all be named Inspiron laptop 1, right? We have to get a little bit more granular than that. But a lot of those are also consumed downstream from the DAM by APIs, by other models, by other integrations. And having that formula of, it almost looks like an algebra formula of the file names helps those downstream tools, suck those from the DAM in a better way. And also that is specifically what we used for the auto tagging, the phase 1 of that auto tagging model I mentioned. That's one of the reasons we started with product images is they are the most standardized, and we pull a lot of that information from the file name, and that is what is automated starting in August. So for example, if it's a left-facing laptop and it's open 90 degrees, right at the end of the file name, you'll have the code LF0090BK, which stands for black. So the model that was built, that our IT team built, was able to say, okay, if it has in this section, if it has the letters LF, it's left facing. We have a field for that. And it just plops it right in and says left facing. So all of those really specific, really granular things that are already in the file names, that was where we started with auto tagging because we're like, look, this is really easy to get a computer to read that. And that's the stuff we want to take off our creative team's plate, right? I don't want our in-house agency, Dell Blue, we don't want them spending time going click, click, click in metadata. We want them making the cool images, right? That's what they're good at. So that was another reason that we started the auto tagging on that particular use case because it was already kind of hard coded into the file names.
Do you see that moving to being more AI specific, being able to scan an image and say, oh, I know what this laptop is, and I know it's right left facing because I'm not even having to put it into the file name structure?
That is the eventual goal. We're not there yet in terms of the model or in terms of kind of Dell's internal usage of AI yet, but eventually, yeah, we would love some model to either be able to scan the image, or we also get a lot of text documents. So we'll get sales guides or pitch decks or white papers in our DAM for the more sales side of the house as opposed to marketing. We kind of straddle the two. And yeah, I would love to have a model that could, read the white paper and provide the description or provide the title or provide the SEO keywords. That's the North Star.
This one's more about asking for advice around your expertise, really advice to give into a DAM manager or librarian who is being pushed to automate and streamline wherever possible. What kind of things can you, with your experience, where you had, how you started, what kind of advice can you give to them to kind of give them a good starting ground, or kind of go back to leadership to be able to say, okay, we can do this first versus something else, or it doesn't all happen instantly, of course.
Of course, yeah. And it's a tricky situation, right? I've had in the last 18 months some uncomfortable conversations with leadership where you have to say, I know this is really cool, but here are the consequences. So my advice for that, and Dell's we love a KPI at Dell. We love our metrics. We love our numbers. Our system is very metrics based, right? So the advice I've had and what I found successful with my leadership is being able to show the impact, right? Phrase it as, hey, this auto tagging, we want to start with product images, which, believe it or not, that was actually a sell that I had to make. We get a lot of campaign materials. Black Friday, Cyber Monday, those are much more complicated assets, right? There's a lot more copyright and legal stickiness around those. They wanted to start with those because they were flashier. And I was able to say, look, here's how many of these product images we get. Here's how many fields we could automate from the jump. Here's what IT is telling me in terms of this one is easier, right? So having the data, having the proof to back up your recommendations, right, is always going to be the most successful, at least in my experience. Again, it's very different depending on the size of your system. Dell's a very large system. I have a lot of infrastructure support. Again, I'm a 3-person team. I have 2 dedicated product managers. I have a dedicated taxonomy team, and I have a dedicated IT team. I'm very spoiled, right? So we've worked with a lot of these folks. I've been with my PDM for 6 years. I've been with our IT team for almost 5, 6 years. So a lot of these people have a very nice long memory, which again, that's kind of a privilege that I get to have of, they are able, just a very close working relationship, but also if I go to our IT team and I say, look, I'm getting pressure on this, tell me why it's a bad idea, or tell me what other way to do it. I'm going to get that information. I'm going to get it pretty frankly, in terms of this would be the impact. And I feel like for leadership, there's the shiny, right? I want to do this. It's really cool. I want to be able to talk about it. And sometimes we can make it happen. But again, it's that iterating from a place of learning, not hype, because the one thing you don't want to do, like I said, is make things worse or get into a situation where you have tech debt, right? Because you're building all these new things and the other things don't really work. You never want to get into that position. It happens, right? But if you can avoid it at all costs, I've found that makes everybody's lives easier, particularly for the people on the front line, which tends to be us folks. But yeah, I've found having that backup, having the data to say why maybe we should go in this direction first will generally be the most compelling to leadership. And it also comes across much more prepared instead of, I often sometimes feel like the negative Nancy, right? I don't want to look like the person that's constantly saying no to AI because I understand what's happening. I understand it's the future. I understand the environment. But we are also the people that tend to have to clean up the messes when things go wrong. So communicating that effectively to leadership by saying, look, you can make whatever decision you want, your leadership, but here are your pros and cons, right? Here's your cost benefit list, right? If we do it this way, these are the potential consequences. If we do it this way, there's still going to be consequences, but they may be smaller. They may still go with option A, but at least you've communicated that as effectively as possible. And all through that, you just continue building trust, right? I feel like we've gone on a journey at Dell with our leadership in particular of when we have that backed up, we have that information, it builds trust for the next time there's a conversation like this. They know you're going to come to the table with the data, and they, you just continue to build those relationships, which just makes everything easier.
We have time for probably a couple more questions here.
Yeah.
We're coming to the end here, but one of the questions was around if you aren't tagging at the SKU level, how do you handle distribution to retailers? And I think in combination to that is also the question about do you utilize a PIM with other metadata management? Because those usually are coordinated together. So there were 2 separate questions, but I kind of want to bring up and see if you can answer.
Yeah, they dovetail. Yeah, no, they definitely dovetail. The dam is not currently hooked up to a PIM. The way that the dam works is it is mostly picked up, particularly the product images, by marketers. So it started as a marketing dam, started as a cloud-based marketing dam before we brought it on-prem. So it is mostly for marketing, right? So we do have various integrations with kind of our channel partners in retail, but it's not a depository. Our dam is not a repository for a retail, like it's not pulling directly from Amazon. We have separate sections, and I won't get into this time permitting, but we have separate sections of the dam that have more of a direct connection with Dell.com and that side of the house. But yeah, we're not currently hooked up to a PIM. And the dam's kind of founding principle, right, was for those marketing images for teams to create and then put those in market. It was kind of a short answer. But if you have further questions, I'll flash my email up again so that everybody can have it, because I'd be more than
Yes,
happy
please.
to chat on that further.
And we are at the end of this session, so I want to say that if there are questions further that we did not get to in this session, please feel free to send Elizabeth a message, an email. And additionally, this will be recorded. And we are looking forward to our next session here that will be coming up immediately. Up next, hear from Cloudinary on how AI elevates image and video DAM workflows.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. Thanks, Tracy.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth, for all your time and your presentation. It was wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.